Welcome friends to the Touch Art channel. Today we will get acquainted with the biography and work of the famous American artist, illustrator, realist, whom many also call the American Renoir William James Glackens. We will see his most significant paintings, find out what typos the garbage cans, as well as the streets of Philadelphia and New York, left on the artist's fate. A lot of interesting things await us ahead, let's go. William James Glackens was born March 13, 1870 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where his family lived for several generations. He had an older sister, Ada, and a brother, Louis, who was known as a cartoonist and illustrator. William was lucky enough to graduate from Central High School in 1890, which was considered one of the best schools in the city. While studying at school, he constantly showed interest and ability in graphics and drawing. After graduation, Glackens became a contributing artist for the Philadelphia Record and later began illustrating for the Philadelphia Press. In November 1891, he enrolled in evening courses at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, where he studied with the famous realist Thomas Anschutz. In fact, the future artist studied with many masters. Experts in his biography noted that it is unlikely that he would have been able to remember all his teachers. The future American impressionist John Sloan studied with Glackens, and this turned out to be a great success. The young illustrator was introduced to Robert Henri, a realist and significant figure in Philadelphia art circles. Henri organized regular meetings between artists in his studio. There were conversations about art, alcohol, and, of course, mutual art criticism. Henri encouraged the young men he brought together to read Whitman and Emerson, William Morris Hunt's Conversations on Art, and George Moore's Modern Painting, and to reflect on the need to create a vigorous new American art appropriate to their time and experience. These meetings became the basis of what would later be called the Ashcan School of American Art, or also called the Trashcan School, a fresh movement that rejected salon academicism and called for depicting life as it is. In 1895, Glackens set off to travel around Europe, studying the art of the old masters, especially devoting time to Dutch painting. Picturesque innovations do not bypass the American, and having rented a studio in Paris with Henri for a year, he enjoyed getting acquainted with Impressionism and Post-Impressionism. For both men, Manet became an idol. Such trips were commonplace for artists of that time. Young artists tried to establish themselves in the American art world by adopting the experience of old masters and new artistic movements. In France, the artist does not take any lessons. He studies independently, making sketches of cafes, shops, embankments, and streets of Paris. Life in the capital of France made Glackens a true admirer of the homeland of the Impressionists, and he returned here periodically throughout his life. After returning to America, and thanks to his friend, colleague, and participant in art meetings in Philadelphia, George Lax, Glackens received a position as an artist at the New York World. His next job would be the large circulation newspaper New York Herald, which he combined with work in several other magazines. McClure's magazine, which had begun to develop detective journalism, sent him to Cuba to cover the Spanish-American War. Here Glackens not only made sketches in the rear, but went to the front line and even suffered from malaria. Although Glackens was making a living as a magazine illustrator at the time, his real passion lay in painting. In 1901, he exhibited at the Allen Gallery with Henri and Sloan, and thereafter received favorable recognition as a promising artist. In 1904, Glackens married American artist Edith Dimmock. Edith received her art education in New York, against the wishes of her parents, and her work was exhibited here. Glackens and Dimmock had 2 children, a boy and a girl. His wife and daughter often acted as models in his paintings, and his son would later write a biography of his artist father. Despite family life, the wife continues to paint, exhibits her works and watercolor drawings, for which she receives a number of positive reviews. After the wedding, she signs her paintings with her maiden name, writer and artist Jerome Myers, recalling his visits to the Glackenses, wrote that for him it was a true pleasure to be in the circle of a friendly family, surrounded by works of art, with the sweet hostess Edith, and having fun with children. He noted that the whole atmosphere was imbued with the special spirit of New York, which can now be found less and less. Contemporaries spoke of Glackens as a good husband who valued and loved his family, which made him particularly stand out from his like-minded people, who allowed themselves not to be burdened by the ties of a permanent relationship. In New York, Glackens became associated with a group of artists known today as the Eight. These are 8 artists, many of whom, like Glackens, were directly related to the Garbage Can school. The company included Robert Henri, Arthur Davis, Maurice Prendergast, Ernest Lawson, Everett Shinn, John Sloan, and George Lax. All these artists were in one way or another related to the printed word. They were writers, journalists, and illustrators. All their attempts to organize an exhibition at the National Academy of Design ended in failure, so in 1908 they opened their work to the public at the Macbeth Gallery. Their exhibition was successful. The artists gained wider recognition and were invited to exhibit in many institutions from Newark to Chicago. The name 8 was not the group's own choice, it clung to them thanks to the press. Soon artists could participate in official exhibitions. The next large-scale exhibition took place in 1910. Glackens continued to illustrate newspapers and magazines, but he himself admitted that he did it without desire, trying to find time for what really interested him, painting. Only in the 1920s, he will be able to support his family doing what he loves. The imprint of journalism served his painting genius well. He captured the smallest details, gestures, and incidents, which made his canvases spontaneous and full of life. During this time, millionaire inventor Albert Barnes, a classmate and friend from Central High School, began studying and collecting modern art. He commissioned Glackens to buy him several advanced works during a trip to Paris in 1912. Glackens returned from Paris with approximately 20 paintings, including works by Cézanne, Renoir, Manet, and Matisse, which formed the core of what became the Barnes Foundation collection. The paintings formed the basis of an exhibition that alarmed the Eight, who considered it destructive of American realism. Glackens also advised Barnes on subsequent art directions and purchases. Among New York artists, Glackens was known for his sophisticated outlook and broad, cosmopolitan tastes. Individual coloristic style was Glackens' new idea and goal. His abrupt change of reference point and turning to the work of Renoir caused a flurry of criticism. He was branded an imitator, believing that his once vigorous, creative personality had been dulled by too close an imitation of Renoir's late style. His art did not reflect the social crises of the time, rather it offered refuge from this darkness. In response to one of the comments, Glackens reasonably remarked, "Can you name a better person than Renoir?" Between 1925 and 1936, he traveled extensively to France, where he studied the art of the Impressionists and Post-Impressionists. His son writes, "Paris was always my father's favorite city, and France was my spiritual home." He distanced himself more and more from his comrades. The artist's works have lost their former mutedness and expressiveness of strokes. Now you could enjoy the bright colors that he used everywhere. For such an unusual coloring for overseas viewers, Glackens was called the American Renoir, despite the fact that critics found an insignificant but noticeable difference in the softer color and less sensual images. His art henceforth ceased to be social. It did not reflect such important milestones for America as the Great Depression, but rather became a refuge from surrounding troubles. His paintings received gold medals at the annual exhibitions of the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in 1933 and again in 1936. Glackens enjoyed a happy marriage, a happy family life and a steady career, although by the 1930s he was perceived as an old-fashioned artist by a younger generation interested in abstraction, surrealism and political art. Glackens' subject matter and style changed throughout his life, influenced by the works he saw during his time in Europe. He depicted scenes of urban life in Paris and its suburbs, and painted theaters and parks in Manhattan. He continued with this style and theme for some time until he began to separate himself from the eight. At this point, his most common subject matter was landscapes, especially beach scenes. Glackens later became best known for his portraits, and towards the end of his life, he concentrated on still lifes. Despite his changing subject matter, Glackens's work was clearly the product of a man who loved the fluid, unbridled quality of oil on canvas. In many ways he was always the gentlest, least radical of the ashcan artists. Nude with an Apple from the collection of the Brooklyn Museum is considered the hallmark of Glackens's post-ashcan career. This is said to be a turning point in his style and his separation from the eight. But the painting Shamukin from the collection of the Art Institute of Chicago is considered perhaps Glackens's most famous painting. It is located in a famous restaurant on 6th Avenue that Glackens and many of his associates regularly frequented. This lush painting shows the burly, red-tied James B. Moore, a middle-aged restaurateur and merry fellow, at table with one of the many young women he served in the city. William Glackens died suddenly while on vacation in Westport, Connecticut on May 22, 1938. He was buried in Cedar Hill Cemetery in Hartford, Connecticut. Inextricably linked to the Ashcan school of garbage cans and the eight, Glackens's legacy continues to be considered an integral part of the realist movement in American art. Collector Albert C. Barnes purchased many of Glackens's finest paintings, which are exhibited by the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney and Juliana Force were admirers of the artist and purchased works for the collection of the Whitney Museum of American Art. Duncan Phillips purchased Glackens oil for the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C. The largest collection of Glackens's art has been housed at the NSU Art Museum in Fort Lauderdale since 2001, where an entire wing is dedicated to his work. The museum's permanent collection contains about 500 paintings by Glackens. With you is the Touch Art channel and the work of the American artist William James Glackens. If you liked the video, don't forget to join our community of lovers of great art. Thank you.